Introduction to the mystery. Among the many enigmas buried within the annals of history, few have sparked as much intrigue, speculation, and literary fascination as the mysterious Man in the Iron Mask. His story is wrapped in layers of secrecy, obscured by contradictory accounts, and entangled with the political turbulence of 17th century France. While the world knows much about the grandeur of Louis XIV's reign, the palatial splendor of Versailles, the rigid social order, and the absolute power wielded by the Sun King, the existence of one man hidden behind an iron mask represents one of the era's greatest puzzles. What secrets lay beneath the mask? Who was he, and why was his identity considered so dangerous that it had to be concealed even in death? These are questions that historians, novelists, and theorists have debated for centuries, each attempting to piece together fragments of truth from whispers and official records that were deliberately obscure. The first known mention of the masked prisoner appears in French archives, documenting the existence of an individual held under extreme secrecy during the latter part of the 1600s. He was believed to be held in prison from at least 1669 until his death in 1703, under the watch of Benigne d'Auvergne de Saint-Mars, a warden who managed several high-security prisons throughout his career. What makes his imprisonment so striking is not only the longevity of his captivity, but the extraordinary measures taken to ensure he remained unseen and unheard, his face allegedly covered at all times, his interactions strictly limited, and his communications heavily monitored. Although popular belief immortalized his mask as being made of iron, some accounts suggest it may have been a velvet cover reinforced with metal elements, a detail often overlooked in favor of the more dramatic imagery that later took hold in literature and cinema. Historians and scholars have proposed numerous theories about his identity, ranging from plausible suggestions to more speculative narratives inspired by politics, familial intrigue, and secret conspiracies. Some believe he was an illegitimate brother of King Louis XIV, hidden away to prevent any potential challenges to the throne. Others posit that he was a disgraced nobleman, a political prisoner whose existence threatened to expose a scandal so severe that complete anonymity was deemed necessary. Certain theories even claim he was a fallen military officer, an ambitious writer, or a diplomat who knew too much about classified affairs. The French philosopher Voltaire, in his writings, insisted that the prisoner was indeed the king's brother, an idea that fueled the legend in the years following his death. Much of the documentation surrounding his imprisonment reflects deliberate attempts at discretion, giving rise to the idea that his incarceration was not just punitive but also symbolic. In an age where power was often displayed through elaborate costumes, crowns, and royal insignias, the forced concealment of a man's face behind an iron mask became a stark representation of control, silencing an individual so completely that he might as well have ceased to exist beyond prison walls. This concept of suppression through obscurity has echoed throughout history in various forms, be it political leaders operating behind propaganda, figures erased from public records, or regimes that have systematically suppressed voices that threatened the established order. The idea that someone's very identity could be so dangerous that it needed to be erased is a chilling thought, highlighting the extent of governmental influence over the fate of individuals. As centuries passed, the mystery of the man in the iron mask was further romanticized, thanks in large part to the works of authors who saw an opportunity to weave historical intrigue into captivating tales. Alexandre Dumas, best known for his masterpiece The Three Musketeers, expanded on Voltaire's theories in his novel The Vicomte de Bragelonne, cementing the idea that the prisoner could have been a direct relation to Louis XIV. In doing so, he ensured that the legend endured well beyond the confines of academic discourse, transforming it into a story of betrayal, concealed truths, and political machinations that continue to captivate audiences in books, films, and plays. Yet, despite the allure of speculation, the truth remains elusive. No definitive evidence exists to confirm his real identity, and any records that might have once answered the question have either been lost to time or were intentionally destroyed. This absence of clarity has given the mystery remarkable longevity, allowing it to morph into a broader discussion about secrecy, justice, and power structures across eras. Today, the very notion of masks, be they literal or metaphorical, continues to hold significance, particularly in political and societal contexts where leaders, governments, and institutions wield influence by control. Political turmoil in 17th century France. The 17th century was a defining period for France, an era marked by both grandeur and instability. It was a time when power was centralized to an extreme degree, with the monarchy exercising near absolute control over governance, law, and even personal freedoms. The imprisonment of the mysterious man in the Iron Mask did not occur in isolation. His existence was woven into the political turbulence that surrounded King Louis XIV, whose reign lasted for over 7 decades. France was undergoing significant transformations, and the strict regulations surrounding the prisoner's identity reflected the monarchy's unwavering commitment to secrecy and authority. To fully understand the implications of his confinement, it is essential to examine the environment in which he was held. The political tensions, the feuds among nobles, and the growing demand for control that shaped every aspect of life in the kingdom. Louis XIV, often referred to as the Sun King, ascended to the throne in 1643, though he formally took full command of governance only in 1661 following the death of Cardinal Mazarin, his chief minister. During his rule, France became a dominant force in Europe, expanding its borders and solidifying its influence through warfare and strategic alliances. However, this period of strength was not devoid of internal struggles. The early years of Louis XIV's reign were clouded by the Fronde, a series of civil wars and rebellions against royal authority that erupted between 1648 and 1653. The uprisings were fueled by discontent among the nobility and commoners alike, who resented the monarchy's growing financial demands and restrictive policies. Though the Fronde was ultimately suppressed, its effects lingered, shaping the king's governing style and reinforcing his belief that absolute rule was necessary for the stability of France. In response to these challenges, Louis XIV adopted a stringent approach to leadership, consolidating power in ways that would minimize threats to his reign. He established Versailles as the political and cultural heart of the kingdom, transforming it into a magnificent palace where he could closely monitor the aristocracy and maintain a firm grip on their actions. The nobility were encouraged, if not compelled, to reside at court, where they were immersed in elaborate ceremonies and obligations that kept them occupied and less inclined to rebel. This strategic move reinforced the king's dominance, ensuring that potential adversaries remained within reach rather than forming independent power bases elsewhere. Yet, despite these precautions, rumors and conspiracies persisted. The need to control information became an integral part of governance, particularly when dealing with sensitive matters concerning royal bloodlines, succession, and political descent. The existence of a masked prisoner, kept under strict surveillance and prevented from communicating freely, fits seamlessly within this framework. If he was indeed related to Louis XIV, whether as an illegitimate brother or as someone with knowledge of a scandalous affair, the monarchy had every reason to silence him. It was not simply about punishment, it was about containment, ensuring that whatever knowledge he possessed never surfaced and that he could never become a figure around whom opposition might rally. The imprisonment itself was handled with notable discretion. Unlike typical political prisoners, who were often banished or openly executed as a warning to others, the man in the Iron Mask was kept hidden, his identity deliberately obscured. This level of secrecy suggests that his existence was more than a mere inconvenience. It was a potential liability that could not be addressed through conventional means. If his identity were publicly revealed, it might have raised questions about the legitimacy of the ruling dynasty or exposed the monarchy to scrutiny that could destabilize the kingdom. Furthermore, Louis XIV's rule was characterized by frequent military engagements and diplomatic maneuvering, which made secrecy an invaluable tool. The king was constantly engaged in conflicts with rival European powers, including Spain, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Netherlands. The need to safeguard intelligence, manage alliances, and suppress internal resistance meant that individuals who held classified information were often subjected to extreme measures. In many ways, the man in the Iron Mask symbolized this broader reality, the lengths to which monarchs would go to control narratives, protect their reputations, and eliminate risks to their authority. As the king aged, his policies grew even more rigid. He imposed heavy taxation to fund military campaigns, revoked religious freedoms previously granted to Protestants, and expanded censorship laws to limit public dissent. These decisions contributed to growing dissatisfaction among the populace, setting the stage for future unrest that would culminate in the French Revolution nearly a century later. However, during his lifetime, Louis XIV remained largely successful in maintaining his rule, and part of that success relied on a sophisticated system of surveillance and suppression. The man in the Iron Mask, whoever he may have been, became a victim of this environment, a prisoner not only of his physical confinement, but also of the political structures that dictated who could be seen, heard, and remembered. His masked existence was not an accident. It was a deliberate choice, one that reflected the monarchy's unwavering determination to preserve its image at all costs. Whether his identity posed a direct threat to the throne, or was simply an inconvenient truth that had to be erased, his continued isolation was a testament to the absolute power wielded by Louis XIV and the unforgiving nature of royal politics. Possible identities. The mystery surrounding the man in the Iron Mask has led to a multitude of theories over the centuries. Who was this prisoner whose identity had to be concealed at all costs? Was he a threat to the throne, a political adversary, or a man whose mere existence disrupted the delicate balance of power in France? Although historical records provide only vague details, scholars, historians, and novelists have pieced together several compelling theories about who he might have been. Each theory carries its own level of credibility, some backed by historical documentation, others fueled by dramatic speculation. Regardless of the truth, the prisoner's story remains one of the most debated enigmas of history. One of the most popular theories suggests that the man in the Iron Mask was Louis XIV's twin brother. This idea, made famous by Alexandre Dumas in the Vicomte de Bragelonne, proposes that the prisoner was the secret twin of the king, hidden from birth to prevent any potential disputes over the throne. The notion of twins being separated at birth for political reasons was not unheard of in history, especially during times when royal bloodlines were strictly controlled to avoid succession crises. If Louis XIV had a twin, his very existence would have posed a significant problem. Two people with equal rights to the throne could lead to a catastrophic civil war. Instead of allowing such a threat to manifest, those in power might have chosen to imprison the twin, ensuring that only one legitimate ruler remained. While no official records confirm this theory, the idea of a concealed twin resonates with the era's secretive nature and royal intrigues. Another widely discussed possibility is that the prisoner was Eustache d'Auga, a man believed to have been a valet caught up in dangerous political affairs. This theory is supported by several historical documents that mention d'Auga's imprisonment under extreme secrecy. According to some records, d'Auga had knowledge of sensitive governmental information, possibly related to royal finances or covert political dealings. If his knowledge had the potential to expose corruption or weaken the monarchy, his imprisonment might have been a method of silencing him permanently. His connection to Louis XIV's court remains unclear, but the level of secrecy surrounding his incarceration suggests that whatever he knew was too important to be revealed. Some historians argue that d'Auga may have been a scapegoat, imprisoned not for his own actions but for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, acquiring knowledge that he was never meant to have. A more dramatic theory points to the possibility that the man in the Iron Mask was Count Mattioli, an Italian diplomat involved in political betrayals. Mattioli was initially engaged in negotiations between France and the Duchy of Mantua regarding territorial control. However, records suggest that he may have double-crossed Louis XIV, revealing crucial details of French plans to rival powers. Such betrayal, especially concerning territorial acquisitions, would have warranted severe punishment. Instead of executing him outright, it is speculated that Louis XIV chose to imprison him, ensuring that he would never again have the opportunity to leak sensitive information. If Matthioli was indeed the man in the Iron Mask, his imprisonment would have served as a warning to other diplomats and spies who dared to cross the king. However, some historians dispute this theory, arguing that Mattioli's documented imprisonment does not entirely align with the masked prisoner's timeline. Some theories even suggest that the prisoner was a disgraced noble, possibly someone who had committed treason against the crown or had knowledge of royal scandals that could not be exposed publicly. France during Louis XIV's reign operated under strict codes of loyalty, and betrayal was met with swift consequences. If the man in the Iron Mask was a nobleman who had either betrayed the monarchy or fallen from favour due to political conspiracies, his identity might have been concealed to prevent further instability. A prisoner of high status could not simply be executed without attracting attention, so maintaining anonymity through imprisonment may have been the safest approach. This theory aligns with records that suggest the prisoner received respectful treatment while incarcerated, something unusual for common criminals but common for exiled nobles. There are also far more speculative theories, some of which border on the absurd. A handful of historians have entertained the idea that the prisoner was a writer or philosopher whose work posed a direct challenge to Louis XIV's authority. While such figures were often censored rather than imprisoned, it is not inconceivable that a particularly rebellious thinker with access to dangerous information could have been locked away to prevent public unrest. Given the Sun King's extensive control over information and propaganda, silencing opposition was crucial to maintaining his reign. Despite centuries of speculation, no single theory has been proven beyond doubt. The only certainty is that the prisoner's identity was considered so dangerous that it had to be erased entirely. If records once existed that confirmed who he was, they have either been lost or deliberately destroyed to maintain the secrecy. The mask, whether made of iron or velvet, was not just a physical restraint but a powerful symbol of suppression. His existence, concealed and controlled, reflects the mechanisms of absolute rule under Louis XIV, where threats to authority were handled with ruthless precision. Life in captivity. The man in the Iron Mask did not just disappear into the depths of France's secretive prison system, he was deliberately erased from existence, locked away under strict conditions that ensured his identity would remain unknown for generations. His imprisonment was not simply an act of punishment, it was an intricate arrangement orchestrated with extreme care. Every detail of his captivity suggests that those in power were not just afraid of his actions but of his very existence. The methods used to keep him silent and concealed raise even more questions about why he was deemed such a significant threat. To understand what his life was like in confinement, we must examine the architecture of the fortresses where he was held, the people assigned to watch over him, and the procedures enforced to guarantee that no information about him ever escaped. From what historical records indicate, the masked prisoner spent much of his life moving between high-security locations, always under the watchful eye of trusted officials. His journey through imprisonment began at Pignerol, a prison facility overseen by the strict warden Benigne d'Auvergne de Saint-Mars. This fortress, located in modern-day Italy, was notorious for holding political prisoners, men who had committed offences against the monarchy or who possessed dangerous knowledge that could undermine the kingdom. The prisoner remained under Saint-Mars' careful supervision, subjected to rigorous isolation measures that severely limited his ability to communicate with others. Saint-Mars, known for his loyalty to the crown, was a man who understood the importance of secrecy. He was a jailer with an impeccable reputation for carrying out orders without question, making him the ideal warden for a prisoner whose existence had to be erased from memory. His dedication to discretion was evident in the detailed reports he sent back to Paris, reports that provided vague descriptions of the masked prisoner but never revealed his identity or the reason for his incarceration. Even the guards assigned to oversee the prisoner were sworn to absolute silence, under threat of severe punishment if they ever spoke of him. As the years passed, the prisoner was transferred to different locations, eventually ending up at the Bastille, the infamous fortress prison in Paris. The Bastille was a symbol of absolute power, a place where political dissidents, spies, and enemies of the state were confined under strict regulations. It was here that the masked prisoner spent his final years before his death in 1703. His confinement followed similar patterns: absolute isolation, extreme secrecy, and constant monitoring. No personal records detailing his life behind bars exist, yet the limited accounts available suggest that his treatment was not cruel, but unusually controlled. He was reportedly given basic necessities, including books and decent meals, leading some historians to believe that he may have been of noble birth or high social standing. One striking feature of his captivity was the presence of the iron mask itself. Although popular myths claim that he wore a solid iron mask at all times, some accounts suggest that the mask was more likely made of black velvet, reinforced with metal bars, and worn primarily when he was in the presence of others. If true, this would indicate that his mask was not intended for torture, but for anonymity, to prevent anyone from recognizing his face. This unusual practice raises an important question. Was the mask imposed upon him from the beginning, or was it introduced later, when authorities realized that his identity needed to be concealed? Every measure surrounding his imprisonment points to a calculated strategy designed to suppress a dangerous truth. Those who came into contact with him were instructed not to engage in conversation, and even the smallest forms of communication were highly restricted. The prisoner lived in near total isolation, unable to form meaningful relationships with his captors or fellow inmates. This intense level of control suggests that the nature of his identity was regarded as highly sensitive, so much so that even speaking his name could have caused political turmoil. Despite this extreme secrecy, some fragments of his life in captivity did escape into historical records. A particularly telling account comes from documents describing the guard's duties, which included delivering his meals in silence and ensuring that no letters, notes, or writings left his cell. The prisoner's living quarters were reportedly clean and well maintained, suggesting that he was not treated like a common criminal, but rather as someone whose comfort was considered important, perhaps as a form of controlled respect toward his rank or status. The mystery deepens when considering his death in 1703. Upon his passing, all of his belongings, including furniture, clothing, and even the utensils he used, were systematically destroyed. His body was buried without any official records identifying him, and any documents linked to his imprisonment were either censored or removed from archives altogether. This further reinforces the idea that his captivity was about more than just isolation. It was about complete erasure. Whatever secrets he held, they were buried with him, leaving behind nothing but speculation and fragmented accounts. The prison system that held him was designed to ensure that certain individuals simply ceased to exist within history. If someone posed a threat to royal power, whether through political ties, birthright claims, or knowledge of classified information, the monarchy had the means to remove them from public memory without resorting to executions that might raise suspicions. The man in the iron mask was a victim of this system, his life locked away under layers of control so absolute that not even his name survived. His story exemplifies the lengths to which monarchs went to protect their power and control narratives. His identity, still unknown to this day, speaks to the lasting impact of secrecy on history. How rulers manipulated information, erased individuals from records, and maintained a carefully curated version of events to secure their rule. The man in the iron mask, whether a forgotten noble, an illegitimate royal, or a political informant, remains a chilling reminder of how governance in absolute monarchies functioned. Nothing was more important than maintaining control, and anyone who threatened it was silenced forever. The role of Voltaire and Dumas. the man in the iron mask remains one of history's most enigmatic figures, and while official documents shed little light on his true identity, literature ensured that he would never be forgotten. The mystery surrounding his existence took on new life through the writings of some of France's most influential figures, particularly Voltaire and Alexandre Dumas. Their contributions turned the masked prisoner from a historical curiosity into a legend, shaping how generations perceived him. Whether fact or fiction, their interpretations deepened the intrigue surrounding his imprisonment and transformed him into a symbol of secrecy, betrayal, and suppressed identities. But why did two of the greatest minds in French literature and philosophy take such an interest in this prisoner? Was it merely a curiosity, or did his story represent something far more significant? Something about power, monarchy, and the suppression of truth? Voltaire and Dumas did not just discuss the masked prisoner, they moulded his story into something larger than life, ensuring that even centuries after his death, his fate remained a topic of speculation and fascination. Voltaire's theory, a hidden brother. Voltaire, one of the leading figures of the French Enlightenment, was known for his sharp wit, skepticism, and relentless criticism of absolute monarchy. His writings often challenged the power of kings, questioning the legitimacy of unchecked rule and advocating for reason over blind obedience. Among the many mysteries he pondered, the man in the iron mask stood out as a glaring example of royal secrecy taken to its extreme. In the age of Louis XIV, Voltaire presented a bold theory that the prisoner was not just another political detainee, but the secret twin brother of King Louis XIV. This idea sent shockwaves through historical discourse. If Louis XIV had a twin, it would have meant that two people had equal claims to the throne, an outcome that could have led to civil war, succession conflicts, or even an attempt to divide royal power. In Voltaire's account, this twin was hidden away since infancy, raised in secrecy, and eventually imprisoned once he became a potential threat. The mask, therefore, was not merely a tool of imprisonment, but a mechanism of erasure, ensuring that no one would recognize his face. Voltaire's theory was controversial, but his influence was so strong that it became one of the dominant narratives surrounding the mystery. He did not provide concrete evidence to support his claims, but he cited sources from inside the French government and prison system, people who supposedly knew of the masked prisoner and had first-hand knowledge of his confinement. Whether these sources were reliable remains uncertain, but Voltaire's reputation ensured that his account would be taken seriously by historians and the public alike. More than just a historical theory, Voltaire's portrayal of the man in the iron mask aligned with his broader philosophical views on monarchy. To him, the prisoner represented the dangers of absolute power, a man locked away because his existence threatened the rule of a king who refused to share authority. The suppression of his identity symbolized the lengths to which monarchs would go to maintain control, reinforcing Voltaire's belief that kings should be questioned rather than blindly followed. Alexandre Dumas. Fiction that became history. If Voltaire sparked interest in the man in the iron mask, Alexandre Dumas ignited it into full-blown legend. Dumas, one of the most celebrated novelists of his time, was known for his ability to blend history with thrilling adventure, weaving intricate tales of betrayal, heroism, and intrigue. His most famous work, The Three Musketeers, explored themes of honor and conspiracy within the French monarchy, making it the perfect foundation for him to expand upon the mystery of the masked prisoner. In the Vicomte de Bragelonne, Dumas fully embraced Voltaire's theory, crafting a dramatic narrative in which the prisoner was the true heir to the throne. Unlike Voltaire, who presented his interpretation as a historical possibility, Dumas turned the mystery into an epic tale of political betrayal. His story suggested that Louis XIV had imprisoned his twin brother to ensure his uncontested reign, setting the stage for a tragic battle over identity and justice. Dumas' storytelling mastery ensured that this version of events became widely accepted, even among those who knew the historical basis was weak. His depiction of the masked prisoner was not merely academic, it was deeply emotional, turning the figure into a tragic hero trapped in silence and obscurity. The novel's vivid scenes of secret plots, masked figures, and hidden identities cemented the legend in the minds of readers, making it one of the most memorable interpretations of the mystery. Unlike Voltaire, who framed the prisoner's captivity as a direct critique of monarchy, Dumas elevated it to a grand struggle between power and fate. The mask became a metaphor for lost identity, a tool of suppression used by rulers who feared the truth. His version of the story did not focus solely on politics, it explored human suffering, making the prisoner's tragedy something that resonated deeply with audiences. The lasting impact. Through Voltaire and Dumas, the man in the Iron Mask was no longer just a forgotten prisoner. He became a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of suppressed truths and hidden power. Their writings ensured that the mystery survived well beyond Louis XIV's reign, influencing plays, films, and theories that continue to emerge even today. In the years following Dumas' novel, numerous adaptations brought the story to life in different ways. Some faithfully recreated the novel's plot, while others offered new interpretations, exploring alternative identities for the prisoner. Hollywood, in particular, took an interest in the masked figure, producing films that ranged from historical dramas to elaborate fantasies where the prisoner escapes, seeks vengeance, or even replaces his brother as king. Beyond entertainment, the themes introduced by Voltaire and Dumas, secrecy, betrayal, identity suppression, became deeply embedded in political discourse. The idea that leaders might hide the truth to maintain power resonated far beyond 17th century France, aligning with modern discussions about government control, concealed information, and hidden histories. Even though historians have found no definitive proof that the man in the Iron Mask was Louis XIV's twin, or a royal figure at all, the legend has become stronger than the facts. The fascination with masked figures continues in modern storytelling, from superhero tales to espionage thrillers, all of which borrow from the same themes of secrecy and concealed identity, masks and power in history. Throughout history, masks have served as powerful symbols, representing concealment, identity, control, and secrecy. From the Venetian masquerade tradition to the symbolic masks worn by rulers, rebels, and even mythical figures, the idea of covering one's face has been deeply ingrained in human culture. The man in the Iron Mask is a particularly striking example of how a mask can be both a physical object and a metaphor for power. His identity so dangerous that it had to be erased from history. But his case was not an isolated one. Rulers, leaders, and entire civilizations have used masks in various ways to secure control, hide truths, and shape perceptions. The symbolism of masks. A mask is more than just a tool for hiding a face. It is often a statement. Some masks have been used to empower, while others have served to suppress. In the case of the man in the Iron Mask, it was a device of forced anonymity, ensuring that nobody would recognize him. But in other historical contexts, masks have had entirely different meanings. In many ancient cultures, masks were worn by rulers and religious figures to symbolize authority or divine connection. Egyptian pharaohs were often depicted wearing elaborate headpieces that functioned as symbolic masks, reinforcing their godlike status. Similarly, in Mesoamerican civilizations like the The man in the Iron Mask as a lasting example. The man in the Iron Mask fits perfectly into this long history of masks and secrecy. His story reflects the intersection of power and anonymity, showing how rulers use suppression to eliminate threats not just physically, but conceptually. His mask was a prison in itself, ensuring that he was neither seen nor recognized, erasing his identity in a way that ensured history could never fully reclaim him. While his case is unique, the principles behind his imprisonment remain deeply relevant in discussions of leadership, secrecy, and deception. The idea that a person could be hidden from the world simply because their existence posed a threat speaks volumes about the nature of absolute power, something that has repeated throughout history. modern echoes of the Iron Mask. The story of the man in the Iron Mask is not just a relic of the past, it continues to resonate in today's world, where secrecy, concealed identities, and information control remain central to power structures. Though the prisoner himself was confined in the 17th century, his legacy endures in the way modern governments, intelligence agencies, and leaders use secrecy to manipulate narratives, protect classified information, and obscure inconvenient truths. The symbolism of the masked figure reflects deeper societal issues that persist even in the digital age. Secrecy and political power. Throughout history, rulers have understood the importance of controlling narratives, and modern political leaders are no different. In many countries, governments employ strategic secrecy to prevent the public from gaining access to sensitive information. This can take many forms, from classified documents and restricted media coverage to propaganda designed to shape public perception. In democratic nations, leaders frequently withhold critical details about military operations, economic strategies, or political scandals under the guise of national security. While some secrecy is justified, the suppression of truth often sparks controversy. For example, whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange revealed how governments engage in mass surveillance and covert operations that extend beyond official transparency. Their exposure of classified information led to intense debates about whether secrecy is necessary for stability or simply a tool of control. In authoritarian regimes, secrecy operates at an entirely different level. Leaders in such governments use propaganda, censorship, and media control to mask realities that could disrupt their grip on power. Historical revisionism, selective reporting, and the outright suppression of political opposition function as modern equivalents to the forced anonymity imposed upon the man in the Iron Mask. Just as his identity was erased to prevent instability, contemporary governments often erase dissenters, restricting their influence or imprisoning them under false pretenses. This raises an essential question. How much secrecy is too much? The concept of ruling through hidden truths is centuries old, but in the age of digital information, it has taken new forms, some far more sophisticated than the Iron Mask ever was. Surveillance and the digital mask technology has revolutionized the ways governments and individuals mask their identities, sometimes for security, sometimes for deception. The rise of surveillance states means that anonymity is harder to achieve, yet paradoxically, people are more reliant than ever on digital disguises. For instance, encryption and cybersecurity measures allow individuals, organizations, and even intelligence agencies to hide their actions behind layers of secrecy, much like the mask concealed the identity of Louis XIV's prisoner. Advanced tools such as VPNs, anonymized browsing, and encrypted messaging serve as modern versions of the historical mask, enabling secure communication without revealing one's true identity. However, this anonymity is often challenged by powerful institutions with the means to unmask individuals whenever they see fit. Governments track citizens, monitor social media activities, and maintain vast databases containing personal information, essentially removing the digital masks people try to wear. The irony is that while technology has given people more ways to conceal their identities, it has also provided governments with unprecedented surveillance capabilities, allowing them to strip anonymity away at will. Masked figures in modern resistance movements. The legacy of the man in the Iron Mask extends beyond political secrecy. It has also inspired masked symbolism in modern resistance movements. In many protests and revolutionary uprisings, activists deliberately wear masks to protect their identities while making powerful statements against oppression. One of the most recognizable examples is the Guy Fawkes mask, popularized by the film V for Vendetta and widely used by groups like Anonymous and pro-democracy movements. The mask represents defiance against unchecked power, a visual echo of historical figures who were forcibly silenced. Masked protests have played key roles in demonstrations across the world, particularly in countries where freedom of speech is restricted. Activists use masks to protect themselves from surveillance, retaliation, and imprisonment, just as revolutionaries in the past sought anonymity to escape persecution. Whether in Hong Kong, the Middle East, or Latin America, the mask remains a symbol of defiance, offering protection in the fight for justice. The psychological impact of concealed identity. Beyond political symbolism, the very act of concealing one's identity carries profound psychological implications. Being forced to wear a mask, whether literally or figuratively, alters a person's existence, stripping them of individuality while imposing an artificial identity upon them. This concept was crucial in the case of the man in the iron mask, whose captivity was not just about imprisonment, but about the destruction of his personal identity. Modern psychology explores how anonymity affects behavior, communication, and self-perception. In some cases, masks liberate people, allowing them to express thoughts and feelings they would otherwise suppress. This is evident in online anonymity, where users engage in discussions without fear of judgment. However, famous adaptations in literature and film. The story of the man in the iron mask has captivated audiences for centuries, becoming one of history's most enduring mysteries. While the real prisoner remains an enigma, his legend has flourished in literature, theatre, and cinema, each adaptation offering its own interpretation of his identity, his imprisonment, and the political intrigue surrounding him. From classic novels to modern films, the masked prisoner has been reshaped to fit the imagination of different generations, making him not just a forgotten prisoner, but a cultural icon. Early literary mentions, before the man in the iron mask became a widely recognized figure in entertainment, he was first introduced to the public through historical writings. As discussed in a previous segment, Voltaire was one of the earliest figures to popularize the mystery, speculating about the prisoner's royal bloodline and inspiring widespread curiosity. However, it was Alexandre Dumas who turned speculation into full-blown legend, incorporating the masked man into his novel, The Vicomte de Bragelonne, 1850, part of the Three Musketeers saga. Dumas crafted a dramatic story in which the prisoner was the hidden twin of King Louis XIV. Locked away to prevent challenges to the throne, his novel was filled with political intrigue, betrayal, and action, transforming the man in the iron mask into a tragic figure fighting against forces greater than himself. This version of the story, though purely fictional, became one of the most influential interpretations of the mystery, shaping how future audiences perceived the prisoner. Over time, writers and playwrights expanded upon Dumas' vision, creating their own versions of the story. Some depicted the prisoner as a wrongfully convicted noble, others as a secret heir to power, and some as a revolutionary whose identity was silenced. His narrative grew beyond historical accuracy, evolving into a broader symbol of injustice, secrecy, and hidden truths. Early film adaptations, 1900s to 1950s. With the rise of cinema in the 20th century, filmmakers saw the opportunity to bring the mystery to the big screen. The earliest adaptations focused on swashbuckling adventure, blending historical elements with action-packed storytelling. One of the earliest known film interpretations was The Iron Mask, 1929, starring Douglas Fairbanks, an iconic figure in early Hollywood. The film, largely inspired by Dumas' novel, portrayed the masked prisoner as the lost heir to the throne, featuring dramatic sword fights, daring escapes, and emotional betrayals. Though silent-era films had limitations in storytelling, this version set the foundation for future adaptations. In the 1950s, the mystery took on new cinematic interpretations, with European filmmakers producing historically driven adaptations. These versions aimed to explore the political backdrop of Louis XIV's reign, focusing on court intrigues, conspiracies, and the prisoner's life within the Bastille. While these films lacked the theatrical drama of Hollywood's swashbucklers, they introduced a deeper understanding of how secrecy functioned under absolute monarchy. Hollywood's take on the legend, 1970s to 2000s. As cinema evolved, Hollywood embraced the legend, producing films that turned the man in the iron mask into a heroic figure fighting against oppression. These versions often abandoned historical accuracy in favor of grand spectacle, making the prisoner more than just a passive victim. He became a revolutionary force capable of reshaping his own fate. One of the most well-known adaptations is The Man in the Iron Mask, 1998, starring Leonardo DiCaprio as both King Louis XIV and his secret twin brother. The film expanded upon Dumas' storyline, presenting a thrilling tale of betrayal, deception, and a plot to overthrow the monarchy. The masked prisoner, played by DiCaprio, is portrayed as a tragic character, locked away for years before finally being rescued by the legendary musketeers. This adaptation, despite taking creative liberties, introduced the mystery to a global audience, cementing the Man in the Iron Mask as a cultural phenomenon. The film's success rekindled interest in the legend, leading to renewed discussions about his historical significance, his possible identities, and the real conditions of his imprisonment. TV and modern retellings, in addition to films, television series, and streaming adaptations, have continued to explore the masked prisoner's story, often using it as a metaphor for injustice, secrecy, and hidden history. Historical dramas set during the time of Louis XIV frequently reference the mystery, incorporating elements of the masked figure into broader narratives about monarchy, espionage, and power struggles. Shows like Versailles, 2015, have touched upon the legend, integrating the prisoner's story into the portrayal of Louis XIV's reign. While these adaptations do not always revolve entirely around the Man in the Iron Mask, they use him as a symbol of royal secrecy, reinforcing how rulers controlled information and silenced individuals who threatened their power. Modern streaming platforms, recognizing the ongoing fascination with historical mysteries, have explored the possibility of new adaptations, offering historical documentaries and fictional retellings of the legend. With advancements in filmmaking and digital storytelling, future interpretations may provide even deeper analysis, blending historical research with compelling narrative twists. The cultural significance of the legend beyond books and films. The Man in the Iron Mask has taken on a broader cultural meaning, appearing in art, theatre, and even political discourse. His masked existence has become a metaphor for suppressed identities, often referenced in discussions about secrecy, authoritarian rule, and individuals erased from history. The idea that someone could be forcibly hidden because of their importance or political threat resonates far beyond 17th century France. The masked prisoner represents the dangers of absolute power, reminding audiences that governments, monarchs, and rulers have often chosen to erase people rather than allow uncomfortable truths to surface. In literature, he is a tragic hero. In cinema, he is an action-driven revolutionary. In history, he remains a mystery. Each interpretation reshapes the legend in a new way, ensuring that the masked prisoner never truly disappears, even centuries after his death. Psychological effects of masking identity. To understand the deeper significance of the Man in the Iron Mask, we must first examine the psychological effects of enforced anonymity. Humans rely on identity as a fundamental aspect of existence. Our names, appearances, and social interactions define who we are. When someone is stripped of their identity, it is not just an act of physical confinement, it is an attack on their sense of self. In cases where individuals are deliberately erased, whether through imprisonment, exile, or forced anonymity, their psychological state undergoes profound transformations. Studies in modern psychology show that identity suppression can lead to emotional detachment, loss of cognitive clarity, and diminished self-worth. These effects are not just theoretical, they align with historical examples of forced isolation, including solitary confinement in modern prisons. The Man in the Iron Mask was not only locked away but actively prevented from being seen or recognized. The very concept of a mask imposed upon him as part of his imprisonment suggests that his existence was too dangerous to acknowledge. This level of psychological suppression indicates that his captors did not simply wish to confine him, they sought to erase him from history itself. The mask as a tool of political control. Beyond individual psychology, the use of masks in political settings has long served as a mechanism of control and deception. Leaders throughout history have employed secrecy as a strategy to manipulate narratives, create illusions of strength and suppress opposition. Famous cases of hidden and lost heirs. The Lost Dauphin. Louis XVII of France. One of France's most tragic stories involves Louis XVII, the son of King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. After the French Revolution, Louis XVII was imprisoned at the age of 8, separated from his family and kept under harsh conditions. The official story states that he died in captivity in 1795. But for decades, conspiracy theories suggested that he had escaped. Some claim that royal loyalists smuggled him out, replacing him with another boy who died in prison. Others allege that the monarchy continued to conceal his survival to prevent further uprisings. While modern DNA analysis confirms his death, this case reflects how secrecy and hidden heirs remained a constant theme in royal politics, similar to the uncertainty surrounding the man in the Iron Mask. The disappearance of Princess Anastasia. The Russian Romanovs. The Russian royal family, the Romanovs, faced a dramatic end during the 1917 revolution. Tsar Nicholas II and his children, including Princess Anastasia, were reportedly executed in 1918. However, for decades, rumors persisted that Anastasia had survived, hidden by royal sympathizers who sought to protect the bloodline. Several women claimed to be Anastasia, asserting that they had escaped and lived in secrecy under false identities. Much like the man in the Iron Mask, her existence became a controversial legend, blending fact and fiction. DNA tests later confirmed her death, but the legend endured, demonstrating how royal bloodlines often attract conspiracies and secrecy. King Richard III's lost nephews. The Princes in the Tower. Another case of vanished heirs involves Edward V and Richard of York, two princes who were supposed to inherit the English throne after the death of King Edward IV. Instead, their uncle, Richard III, placed them in the Tower of London, after which they mysteriously disappeared. Were they murdered, exiled, or hidden? No definitive evidence exists, but many historians suspect that Richard III ordered their deaths to secure his claim to the throne, eliminating competition much like Louis XIV may have done with the man in the Iron Mask. Illegitimate heirs and secret royal scandals. Not all hidden heirs were rightful successors. Some were illegitimate children, born to kings or queens outside of marriage, creating conflicts over succession. Royal families were often forced to conceal affairs, especially when children were involved. Henry I's numerous illegitimate children. England, 12th century, King Henry I of England, holds the record for the most illegitimate children born to a single monarch. Historical estimates suggest he had over 20. While many were acknowledged, none were legally eligible for succession. However, some illegitimate children of monarchs attempted to claim the throne, leading to disputes. This reflects the power struggles that occurred when hidden heirs tried to emerge from secrecy, sometimes leading to civil wars or political assassinations. Napoleon's secret son. Some historians believe Napoleon Bonaparte may have had an illegitimate son, whose existence was hidden to prevent succession battles after his exile. While evidence is inconclusive, rumors persisted that a son was secretly raised under a different identity, much like the mystery surrounding the man in the Iron Mask. Royal families and their control over information secrecy was essential to monarchies, not just to protect heirs, but to manage public perception. Royal families carefully controlled historical records, religious narratives, and even artistic depictions of rulers. For example, official portraits were often altered to present rulers in a certain way. Some records were forged to erase controversial events. Royal chronicles omitted stories of illegitimate children or political betrayals. This deliberate manipulation ensured that only the approved version of history survived, shaping public knowledge of rulers and dynasties. Similarities between the man in the Iron Mask and other hidden royals. Examining these cases reveals key similarities between the man in the Iron Mask and other hidden heirs. Forced disappearance, many royal figures were erased to maintain political stability. Rumours of survival. Just as speculation surrounded the masked prisoner, heirs like Louis XVII and Anastasia Romanov became subjects of conspiracy theories. Secret imprisonment. Monarchs used captivity as a method of concealment, often locking away individuals rather than killing them. The question remains, was the man in the Iron Mask just another lost heir, hidden like so many before him? Or was his case different, suggesting deeper political motives? The illegitimate son of Anne of Austria, a secret birth. Another theory suggests that the man in the Iron Mask was not the twin brother of Louis XIV, but his illegitimate half-brother, the result of a secret affair between Anne of Austria, the Queen Mother, and an unknown noble or military officer. This theory claims that Anne's pregnancy was hidden from the public, and that her son was placed in secrecy to avoid political scandal. If a secret heir existed, his very presence would jeopardize the royal bloodline, leading to a permanent cover-up. Some proponents argue that the masked prisoner had noble treatment while in captivity, receiving respectful care and high-quality meals, suggesting that he may have been a royal figure kept under discreet imprisonment rather than an ordinary criminal. Why it's believable? Royal affairs were often covered up to prevent scandals. The masked prisoner was allegedly treated with dignity, which could indicate noble heritage. Why it's unlikely? No evidence confirms Anne of Austria had a secret child. French officials could have exiled such an heir rather than keeping him imprisoned for life. Despite these weaknesses, the theory remains compelling to those who believe the masked prisoner had royal blood, the disgraced French diplomat, a man who knew too much. Some historians believe the masked prisoner was a diplomat or political insider who uncovered highly sensitive information, something so explosive that he had to be silenced permanently. One prominent version of this theory suggests that the man in the Iron Mask was Count Mattioli, an Italian diplomat who betrayed France during a secret negotiation. Mattioli allegedly revealed classified French military plans to rival powers, effectively sabotaging Louis XIV's ambitions. If true, his imprisonment would have been a punishment not just for treason, but for ensuring that he could never share more classified details with anyone else. Why it's believable? Mattioli's betrayal is documented in historical records. Diplomatic secrecy was critical to maintaining power in European courts. Why it's unlikely? The timeline of Mattioli's imprisonment doesn't match perfectly with records of the masked prisoner. Most diplomats were exiled or assassinated, not permanently masked and hidden away, while the theory that the prisoner was a political insider silenced for national security is reasonable. Mattioli's direct connection to the masked prisoner remains disputed. The parallels between espionage and identity suppression, from early spy networks in royal courts to modern intelligence operations, the idea of secrecy, misinformation, and concealed identities has remained a fundamental aspect of governance. The man in the Iron Mask's forced anonymity mirrors how states have used secrecy to control narratives, remove threats, and operate through invisible hands. Secret identities in espionage, the role of hidden figures. Throughout history, spies, informants, and undercover agents have adopted false identities or operated in complete secrecy to manipulate events from behind the scenes. Intelligence agencies work to keep certain individuals erased from public records, ensuring that their presence remains invisible to both enemies and allies. Cold War espionage. Rival intelligence agencies, such as the CIA, MI6, and KGB, employed secret informants who operated without a trace, influencing geopolitical tensions through covert missions. World War II code breakers, figures like Alan Turing, whose crucial decryption work helped win the war, were initially hidden from public recognition. His contributions were kept secret for years due to classified restrictions. Deep cover agents. Even today, many intelligence operatives live under false identities, ensuring that their presence remains hidden from the world. These individuals share a thematic connection with the man in the iron mask, reflecting the notion that some figures must remain unseen to protect political or national interests. Their secrecy aligns with how rulers manipulate public awareness, erasing those who are considered inconvenient or dangerous, masking identity in modern governance. Beyond intelligence operations, governments continue to use secrecy as a tool of control, ensuring that certain historical truths remain classified, modified, or suppressed. Some of the most prominent examples of modern information suppression include classified military operations. Nations conceal details about covert missions, nuclear projects, and war strategies, shaping global history without revealing their full influence. Digital surveillance and cyber espionage. Governments monitor civilian data while keeping major intelligence networks secret, controlling public awareness of digital operations. Erasure of political opponents. Some regimes imprison, exile, or assassinate opposition figures, ensuring that critical dissenters vanish without leaving traces. Much like Louis XIV's decision to erase the man in the iron mask, modern governments continue to operate under layers of secrecy, ensuring that only the approved version of events reaches public consciousness. The symbolism of masks in pop culture and social movements. While masks have historically been used to erase identities, they have also evolved into symbols of rebellion, anonymity, and hidden truths. In modern society, the mask has taken on a powerful role in protests, activism, and pop culture, reflecting its deep connection to political secrecy. Masked figures in fiction, representations of hidden power. Many fictional characters embody the themes of identity suppression and secrecy, reinforcing how masked individuals are often linked to power and rebellion. Batman, a figure who conceals his identity to operate outside the constraints of society, using anonymity as a form of justice. Farfouilles for Vendetta's Guy Fawkes mask, a symbol of rebellion against authoritarian governments worn by real-world protest movements. Phantom of the Opera, a tragic masked figure whose concealed identity represents isolation and unspoken truths. These figures share symbolic ties with the man in the iron mask, proving that concealed identities remain deeply relevant in literature, film, and social storytelling. Masks in modern protests, a reflection of political resistance. In today's world, masks serve not just as disguises, but as tools of activism. Many anti-government protests and revolutionary movements have adopted masked figures as symbols of resistance, reinforcing their fight against oppressive institutions. Hong Kong protests, 2019 to 2020. Protesters wore masks to avoid facial recognition surveillance, protecting their identities from government retaliation. Anonymous movement. The hacker collective uses the Guy Fawkes mask to represent internet activism and opposition to corporate and political corruption. Masked demonstrations in Latin America and the Middle East. Activists use masks to shield themselves from state surveillance, ensuring that their dissent remains anonymous. Much like how the man in the iron mask was silenced to prevent disruption, modern activists and revolutionaries use masks to reclaim hidden voices, ensuring that their movements cannot be easily suppressed. Lessons from the man in the iron mask, what he teaches about power. Ultimately, the man in the iron mask reveals the nature of political control, secrecy, and the manipulation of identity and governance. His story, though shrouded in mystery, offers important lessons on how power operates, both in the past and present. 1. Power thrives on secrecy. The decision to conceal the prisoner's identity rather than kill him shows that some truths are too dangerous to be revealed. This mirrors how modern governments classify intelligence to control public perception. Authoritarian rulers suppress dissent to eliminate opposition, Military and spy agencies operate through secrecy to conduct hidden operations. The man in the iron mask represents the concept of enforced invisibility, proving that what is not seen can be more powerful than what is known. 2. Identity suppression is a political weapon. The very act of forcing someone into anonymity reflects how rulers manipulate identity as a tool of oppression. Historically, this has taken many forms, including erasing figures from historical records to control national narratives, removing legitimate heirs or political rivals to preserve dynastic power, restricting access to classified documents to shape public understanding of history. From monarchies to intelligence operations, concealing identities ensures that power remains absolute, preventing threats from emerging. Third, secrecy can both preserve and destroy authority. While secrecy is often a tool used to protect governance, it can also lead to its downfall. Many revolutions have been fueled by the revelation of hidden truths, including the exposure of political scandals that weakened corrupt regimes, the release of classified information that uncovered illegal government activities, leaks revealing intelligence operations that reshape global power structures. The paradox of secrecy is that while it can secure rule, it can also erode trust in institutions, proving that what is hidden does not always stay hidden forever.